happy with the race experience. Max Verstappen.
And that is Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen won his first World Championship title.
Max Verstappen has written royal racing history forever. In the final battle with the 7-time Formula 1 champion, Max came out on top. So how did a little 4-year-old boy who had just got behind the wheel of a kart grow up to become the youngest ever Formula 1 champion? What was the secret of his success?
For the first time ever, is champion of the world!
Let's take a closer look at his story. Born to race. How much did his parents and environment influence his success? Max's destiny as a racing driver was sealed before he was even born. His father, Jos Verstappen, was also a royal racing driver. The elder Verstappen was in the same team as F1 champion Michael Schumacher and has many years' experience as a racing driver, spanning most of the 1990s. Max's mother, Sophie Kumpen, has also contributed to her son's racing DNA. She enjoyed a successful career in karting, winning the prestigious Andrea Margutti Trophy in 1995. Max's relatives, Uncle Anthony and grandfather Paul, also competed in GT racing. The absolute commitment to racing that is in Jos's DNA has been passed on to Max. The Verstappen family worked very hard to give him the best possible foundation through karting and racing. They made the right decisions to put Max in the right place. At a time when most of us were making our first tentative attempts to control and balance a bike, young Max was already trying his hand at motorsport. Max's father remembers, "He was 4.5 when we first took him karting. Max mastered the kart in just one day and we immediately bought him a bigger one. Sometime later, when Max was 7, he took to the grid for the first time. At the same time, the young Verstappen won the first race of his life. We prepared very well," says Max's father. He was competing against other mini juniors who could have been 9 or 10 years old, so Max beat the older guys. The hard way of training. What did the driver have to endure on his way to the coveted Formula 1 championship? The next 10 years served to lay a solid foundation for the future world champion. Jos Verstappen decided to devote himself entirely to Max's budding career. Father and son traveled together in his van from race to race, winning one race after another. In addition to attending numerous championships and races, training camps, and preparations, the driver and his father traveled 100,000 kilometers each year. Jos was always at the track, especially in the rain, to give Max the right advice at the right time. He would point out his son's mistakes and help the future Grand Prix winner develop his driving technique. Max's early style can be described as follows. From the very beginning, from the very first lap, he drives to the limit even when the tires are cold. But things did not go smoothly. Jos was more passionate about his son's career than he was himself, and the bar was set very high. He was obsessed with one thing, Max. But sometimes it felt like he was making fun of his son. For example, when it rained and Max forgot his raincoat or umbrella, Jos didn't do anything. He didn't care if the boy got wet. If Max waited too long to overtake his rival, Jos was sure to yell at him after the race. "Damn, you should have been quicker!" Max kept his helmet on so as not to show his tears. But thanks to this upbringing, the racer has developed an inner core, a character that he brings to the races. Max won everything he could in karting and was ready to move on to a higher level. He would later say of his childhood, "In Formula 1, nothing surprised me because nobody treated me as hard as my father." A new stage and a step up to the big leagues. Max and Jos faced their first serious problems in Formula 3. They did not have enough money to compete when the deadline for applications for the season approached. €500,000 was needed to compete, and no one wanted to sponsor a 16-year-old racer. Finally, the key people gathered at the Van Amersfoort Racing Team office. Max was registered as a Formula 3 driver. Rottengatter invested in the young Verstappen. It was he who bought the car for €150,000. Verstappen was inspired by the transition to Formula 3. He immediately began to stand out. Of all the races he won, the Norris Ring was the most impressive. In his first F3 championship, Max Verstappen finished third in the championship and won 10 races. Thanks to this, the young Dutch talent caught the attention of F1 teams. Then Max caught the eye of an important person, Red Bull's advisor Helmut Marko. He immediately rushed to sign the guy, agreed with both Verstappen, and already in March 2015 in Melbourne, Max became the youngest driver in the history of Formula 1. He was 17 years and 166 days old. Max remembers that time. "Some people said I was too young. I didn't even have a driving license then. My driving instructor knew I was in F1, but he was still very strict, and rightly so. So how did Verstappen become not only the youngest driver, but also the youngest winner? An outstanding first season in F1 brought the young Dutchman more than just championship points. Thanks to his agile and daring overtaking at the Belgian circuit of Spa, Verstappen won awards such as Rookie of the Year, Personality of the Year, and Performance of the Year, all of which contributed to Helmut Marko calling Max to inform him of his promotion. The Dutchman will officially become a Red Bull team driver from the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix. Red Bull showed everyone how to nurture young talent and give it a chance. Verstappen wasted no time in claiming a resounding victory in his first Spanish Grand Prix with Red Bull. The talented Dutchman held off Ferrari's Kimi Räikkönen in the closing stages to become the youngest ever F1 Grand Prix winner at the age of 18. The driver began to cramp with a few laps to go. It was a colossal thrill. The debut victory in Barcelona was just a small warm-up for the victories to come the following season. So far in 2017, Verstappen has won in Malaysia and Mexico and finished 6th in the F1 Constructors' Championship. In 2019, Max Verstappen raises his own bar and finishes the season in the top 3. In the shortened 2020 season, the Dutch Red Bull driver scores 2 wins and returns to the top 3 in the Constructors' Championship. Verstappen has tightened up his driving style this season, trying to eliminate the occasional mistakes he made previously due to his temperament. The British Grand Prix has really intensified the rivalry with Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton's controversial move at Silverstone resulted in Max hitting the wall at high speed and ending up in hospital.
That's the sight I did want to see after a very nasty collision into the tyre.
He suffered a 51G impact in the collision, but the Dutchman refused to give up and won the next 2 rounds in Belgium and at his home Grand Prix of Holland. However, the main rivals of the season, Verstappen and Hamilton, collided again, this time on the Italian circuit of Monza. As a result of the accident, both went off the track and the confrontation between the season's 2 favorites intensified. After that, Max managed to avoid trouble with Mercedes on the track, and the Red Bull piggy bank began to be filled with new victories. First podiums in Turkey, the USA, and Mexico, the title seemed to be in the Dutchman's hands. But the most important race of the championship began in the Middle East. The decisive battle for the title took place at the final race in Abu Dhabi, where it was unknown until the final lap who would be F1 champion in 2021. But in the final corner, just before the finish line, everything was decided. The Red Bull driver was the first to take the checkered flag. After winning the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, Max Verstappen became F1 World Champion for the first time in his career. In addition, the 24-year-old driver became the first champion from the Netherlands and brought the first victory for Red Bull since 2013 and for Honda since 1991. These titanic title battles don't happen every decade or 20 years, but when they do, it's always an incredible experience to watch 2 great drivers go head-to-head.